Hi, this is Michael Waits recording live from the Singapore FinTech Festival 2024. Thank you for joining us for this special edition of Insurance for the New Possible, where we discussed the most innovative ideas in FinTech. We are joined today by Ryosuke Ushida, the Chief FinTech Officer at the Financial Services Agency, the FSA of Japan. Thank you so much for joining us at the Singapore FinTech Festival 2024. Welcome to Singapore.
Thank you very much, Michael, for having me for these fantastic opportunities. I am Ryosuke Ushida, Chief FinTech Officer of Japan Financial Services Agency, which is financial regulators. But we try to be a pro-innovation regulators like Singapore MAS and any other countries' regulators. So we are happy to share what's going on in Japan's FinTech scene.
Super duper. Let's talk about Japan a little bit. How would you describe the current state of the FinTech ecosystem in Japan?
So I think Japan's fintech ecosystem is finally taking off.
Finally.
So, fintech, one of the biggest value proposition is financial inclusion.
Right.
But in that sense, most of Japanese people have banking account, have access to financial services.
For
so
sure.
That's why not many fintech services are widely used in Japan for now. But, AI is coming, blockchain is coming. And then Japanese financial system is a bit legacy. So, they are exploring how to leverage emerging technologies like AI, blockchain to update their financial services. And then they are looking for, incumbent players like banks and the insurance companies are looking for partnership with third-party providers who has innovative financial service technologies. So that's why I think it should be now to look at the Japanese market for entrepreneurs.
So two things. What drove this change, right? You said finally. So what changed in between before finally and now at finally to make it possible for FinTech to grow and flourish in Japan?
So one of the big catalysts was the pandemic. So,
Really? Because people weren't going out.
Yeah, so if you know, Japanese people really like cash. So the cashless ratio is just 20%.
Is it really?
Yeah,
Wow.
until 2019. But now it's more than 40%. So it's still quite low, but it's doubled in these 5 years. And we will see more as a cashless payment method and then more growth for fintech payment sector. So that's one reason. And another reason is that, Japanese government is very eager to make Tokyo and Japan as a financial center hub.
Absolutely.
And fintech is a strong driver for that. So that's why I'm here in
That's why I'm
Singapore
here.
to attract international players to Japanese market.
Has there been a generational change inside the FSA? Remember, I used to work at Morgan Stanley and Goldman Sachs in Tokyo, and we were often interacting with the FSA. Is this okay? When will this be okay? Perfectly fine. And frankly, I always felt the FSA was fair and balanced along the way. But the guys and gals that I were dealing with weren't from your generation. Has there been a generational change that's driving some of this as well?
Yeah, I think so to some extent. But, even senior level of our agency really committed
For
to
sure.
the innovation. So that's why I'm relatively young, but still,
I can tell.
I'm traveling all over the world and then try to promote FSA as a good regulator. So I think, some of Japanese financial people may think FSA is a conservative and it's a little bit, regulation is a little bit tight, it's unfriendly for new innovation, but actually it's not. Actually, we are changing regulation like every year, and then we have a good regulation for crypto asset and then open banking and then insurtech. So we are trying to provide a level playing field for not only locals and the international. So that's something we are doing.
So do you find now that with this kind of generational change at your level inside the FSA, this openness to emerging technologies, the impact of the pandemic, that are you finding now when you reach out to both incumbent companies and the newer fintechs, when you partner with them to learn more, that they are really eager now to share the new innovations that they have, and then it makes it easier for them to understand why you do what you do?
Yeah, so let me share my story a little bit. So,
Please.
I was in London in 2018, studying finance at the London Business School. And then suddenly my boss told me, oh, you should study blockchain as well. Then I moved to Washington, D.C., to Georgetown University, and spent 2 years as a blockchain researcher.
At Georgetown?
Yeah, at Georgetown University. And I came back to Tokyo and then take this position as a chief fintech officer. And then I'm now doing a blockchain AI. So I learned a really lot from, Bitcoin developers and then some, totally different
Right.
people who has a strong, motivation
Right.
and then will to make our society better. So regulators do not speak to these people very much, but we realize we have to change.
Have
so
to.
our counterparts should be not only banks,
Right.
but also tech providers.
There's a whole bunch of stuff going on over
developers,
there,
and,
right?
Yeah. So experts like people coming to Singapore FinTech Festival. That's why we encourage FSA itself, but also Japanese financial players to look at more international world and then discuss to many other stakeholders.
So you did this research at Georgetown for 2 years. That's awesome, right? What did you bring back with you in the context of where does that blockchain research that you did and just the things that you learned, plus the artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies fit in? Where do you think it should fit in to the fintech space and even the incumbent space?
So my first academic paper is about a DeFi and
Okay,
then DAO.
DeFi and
So
DAOs.
Yeah. So
Okay.
how we can potentially identify centralized aspect of so-called a DeFi and then DAO.
DAO.
Because
So we should probably define DAO for people that don't know what it is.
Yeah.
Distributed Autonomous Organization, yeah? Just
So
so
it's
they know.
usually we regulated a centralized entity
Right.
like banks
Yep.
and the insurance company, but a DAO does not have a legal entity. So
But no one is
no
in charge and
one-
everyone's in charge at the same
and
time,
then
right?
Governance token is issued and anyone can vote,
Right.
like democracy.
Right.
But basically, our regulation identifies some entities
Right.
to be regulated
Right.
as banks or whatever. But it's sometimes difficult to find those people. But that's why I am doing research on that, and I kind of realize, oh no, there's someone
Right.
who can take responsibilities out of that arrangement. So that's something we brought back to FSA, and then now I am co-chairing Financial Action Task Force Virtual Asset Contact Group, which is in charge of international AML safety policy for crypto industry.
Got it.
So I'm learning a lot in United States, and
Right.
then now I'm doing my job.
You have
as
a great job,
regulator.
actually.
Thank you.
Do you find now that, particularly the fintechs, instead of waiting for you to come to them, that they come to you now and say, can you give us a little bit of advice on this because you've done this research? Is it okay to use artificial intelligence in this instance? There are other emerging technologies like DAOs. Is it appropriate here? Are you finding they come to you now as a resource?
Sure. So I guess many listeners don't know how Japanese regulation
Tell me.
works.
Tell me.
But everyone talk about Singapore, Hong Kong, Dubai, and
Right.
the EU.
Yep.
But actually, we do have a good regulation for both blockchain and AI.
Okay.
So we do have crypto regulation back in 2016.
Right. It was
So,
one of the first, actually,
yeah.
regulatory authorities to enact some type of digital
Yeah.
asset regulation, right? Go
Yeah,
ahead.
we had a Mt. Gox incident back in 2014.
I remember.
So at that time, more than 80% of Bitcoin transactions was taking place in Tokyo in an
Oh,
exchange
right.
named Mt. Gox.
Right.
But it was hacked. And then nearly $5 million US dollars equivalent of Bitcoin was lost.
Right.
So we realized we need a regulation for this industry. That's why we set up that regulation as one of the first countries in the world. And then for AI, Japanese government is quite accommodative about AI. So actually some, big player like OpenAI decided to invest in Japan to develop their models. So it's quite flexible that you can use some data as a training data to develop model. And then FSA is now trying to encourage the healthy use of AI by identifying use case and then potential challenges. And then now we are thinking about how we should do or shouldn't do
Right.
to strike a balance
Yeah.
between innovation and then mitigating potential risks that a new technology could bring.
Do you see different opinions and experiences coming out of larger players like SBI Securities, Nomura Securities, and smaller ones like Okasan and stuff like that? Do you see different reactions and different implementations?
So I cannot talk about specific company,
Yeah,
but
but I just mean the larger
yeah.
ones and the smaller ones. I don't want you to talk about specific companies per se, right?
So, in terms of, digital transformation, so,
Right.
large players are advancing compared to small players.
Fair enough.
So, and that's why small players especially need help or partnership from fintech companies.
Right, because you don't want them to get left behind, right?
Yeah. So we are facing declining population. So especially let's say regional banks, we have more than 100 regional banks, and they are doing great job. But their regional economy is shrinking, so they have to do something new. Otherwise, their business model
Right.
will be end in the end. But it's quite difficult to
It
use
is.
something like AI or blockchain by themselves. That's
Right.
why they need a solution provider.
I was thinking about this because I was recently in Nagasaki.
Great.
I was recently in Nagasaki, and there's a bank there, Juhachi Kingo, and I just thought, like, what are they going to do to? It's just my opinion, like, but it's a smaller bank, it's a regional bank. What are they going to do to sort of take impact from all these new technologies? When you look at it from a higher level, right? And I'm sure now with all the travel that you do, you talk to regulators all over the world. You mentioned Dubai, you mentioned you're in Singapore, right? But even in the United States with the SEC, where do you think Japan fits into this sort of global regulatory environment? And how does it compare?
So I think Japan is one of the leading countries in terms of developing new regulation for emerging technologies, as I mentioned. So
Right.
yeah, I'm doing a job at Financial Action Task Force as well as Financial Stability Board
Okay.
to discuss, financial stability implication on AI or blockchain. So that's something Japan could contribute to international community to have globally level playing field for regulation. Otherwise, international players struggle to comply with different regulatory requirements.
It's
by
hard,
each
right?
country. Yeah.
It's hard. So that brings up another question, though, right? What do you do because the environment's changing in Japan, and because it's had a reputation of being conservative, right? How do you now encourage overseas or foreign fintech players that have a little bit of a head start in the development phase on some of the local players to come into Japan and just not only survive but thrive there, but also then show best practices to the up and coming Japanese fintechs? How do you encourage that?
Yeah, so we are doing a lot of initiatives. So one of them is if you are doing business in asset management, you can complete your registration process in English only.
Oh, really?
So, Japan has a language barrier, which is true, but we would like to attract asset management expert like fund manager
Right.
into Japanese market. That's why we amended our regulation significantly. And then now, such kind of international and expert can enter into Japanese market.
That's a
only in
massive
English.
change.
Yeah, it's a massive change. So, not of many of my colleagues don't speak English, so it's a huge challenge. It's for
For
us,
sure.
but we kind of decided, we have to do so. Otherwise, we cannot attract
Right.
international players. So that's just one example, but we try to change like every day.
Right. So before we started talking, you mentioned, because we were talking about Fukuoka, right? And Fukuoka is trying to become this like startup city. But we also see similar things happening in Kobe, in Osaka,
Yeah.
Tokyo FinTech Week, I think, or Japan FinTech
Sure.
Week you were talking about coming up next March. It was also last March as well. All these little things are happening. How is that changing the environment in Japan as well? Because that's new too.
Thank you very much. That's a great, wonderful question. So, we, Japan FSA government, will organize Japan FinTech Week, March next year,
Right.
from March 3rd to 7th. And
This is a new thing, though, to have it be this global idea, right? Go
yeah,
ahead.
so we learned a lot from what Singapore and then Dubai and then UK is doing. So we realized we needed to develop this kind of fintech community,
Absolutely.
even in Tokyo. So that's why we had an inaugural FinTech Week, March this year,
Good
and
stuff.
then we attracted more than 10,000 people.
10,000 people.
And then importantly, half Japanese and half international.
Perfect. That's exactly what you want, right?
Yeah, so if you want to talk to big banks, Japanese guy, maybe you can talk them in Singapore. But if you want to talk to regional banks
You can do
or
both.
local, brokers, insurance companies, you should come to Tokyo
Absolutely.
or regional place. That's why we organize Japan FinTech Week, not only in Tokyo,
Right.
but many other cities like Fukuoka, Osaka, Sapporo, and then Nagoya and then Kobe potentially.
Right.
So you can travel across Japan, you will find different opportunities out there.
Absolutely. Do you think at some point these fintechs, these early stage, middle stage fintechs that are being developed in Japan can then flip over and turn into global leaders as well? It's going to take a little bit of time, but do you think it's possible?
Yeah, that's exactly what I would like to see in the near future. Indeed, some of the Japanese fintechs are expanding their business.
Right.
into the international market. But still, I'd say, luckily or unluckily, Japanese market is still big. It's a fourth largest economy
Itself,
in the
right?
world. So, and then there is a language barrier. So their business is kind of feasible only in
Just
Japanese
domestically, right?
market. But if they want to become unicorn,
Right.
they have to get outside of the comfort zone, and then they have to do the international business. So we try to encourage them. That's why you will see Japan Pavilion over there. So there are 10 fintech startups
Really?
coming to Singapore to showcase their solutions.
Got it. So if you had to, and I'll let you go after this, but if you had to tell like a foreign fintech that wants to come into Japan what the kind of opportunities are there, how would you explain to them?
Yeah, great. So there are so many opportunities. So one thing is cross-border payment and then remittance. Cross-border payment
Yes,
and
yes, yes.
remittance. So, so many international tourists are now coming to Japan. It's amazing.
It is amazing.
But some of them will find difficult in making payment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And then that's why cross-border, so many international cross-border payment company like Wise are coming into Japanese market, and
Right.
they're expanding their business.
Great.
And then it's not only for retails, but also for SMEs.
Right.
Because, I have to say it's very expensive if I send the money from Japan to other countries.
Right.
So that's why some technology solution providers could find the business opportunities. So I got so many inquiries about how to get a license to make an international payment. So that's one thing. And then crypto, Web3 is another opportunities for international players. So we welcome any types of fintech.
We talk a lot about how we can encourage SMEs in all of Asia, right? In Southeast Asia, they're just a huge part of the economy, in Japan as well. And if you can make payments for them, both back and forth, frictionless, it helps them grow not just internally, but externally as well.
Yeah. So in Japan, there are millions
upon
of SMEs. So there are manufacturers and
Right.
then some service providers. And then I think we have a good knowledge as well as legacies for SME financing.
Fair
so
enough.
potentially we can leverage AI or other technologies to update our solution, and then potentially international players could make our SME finance much better. So definitely they can work together with Japanese banks and then non-bank players.
Awesome. Okay, Ryosuke Ushida, the Chief FinTech Officer at the FSA in Japan. I cannot thank you enough for doing this. You were awesome. You should do more of this.
Thank you very much. My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.